Freeview channel 236.
And YouView channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB Plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe. Bring it on. Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom, and we start with some breaking news. 83 migrants have been rescued by the French Coast Guard after they got into difficulty whilst trying to cross the Channel. 54 people were rescued from one small boat, 29 from another. They were taken to the port of Calais, and at least one required medical attention. We'll bring you more on that story as we get it. The Labour Party says Rishi Sunak still has questions to answer following his sacking of Nadhim Zahawi. The Prime Minister made the decision after an ethics inquiry found that the party chairman had committed a serious breach of the ministerial code. Mr Zahawi has been facing questions over his tax affairs after admitting that he paid a penalty to HMRC for an error. Chair of the Labour Party, Annalise Dodds, says she's written to Rishi Sunak.
What did he know and when about that enormous settlement that Nadhim Zahawi was negotiating with HMRC and the huge penalty that he had to pay? Why did Rishi Sunak say in Parliament that all questions had been answered about this affair? And why on earth is the Prime Minister holding up this rogues gallery of Conservative ministers with others who obviously have broken security rules, who are subject to allegations of very serious bullying, and yet the Prime Minister seems too weak to act against them?
It's been announced today that no newly convicted transgender person with a history of violence against women will be placed in female prisons in Scotland. The temporary measures aim to ensure the safety of inmates while the management of trans prisoners is examined. The decision comes ahead of an urgent review into lessons learned by the case of convicted double rapist Isla Bryson, who was originally sent to a women's prison. A 16-year-old boy has been charged with the murder of a teenage girl in Hexham. 15-year-old Holly Newton was stabbed in the Priestpopple area of the town on Friday. She died in hospital. The 16-year-old boy was also injured in that attack. The accused, who can't be named for legal reasons, has also been charged with attempted murder. The government will publish an urgent emergency care plan tomorrow to try to tackle pressures on the NHS. It comes as the Health Department announced plans to build virtual beds, caring for tens of thousands of elderly and vulnerable people in their own homes. The Health Secretary says shifting care away from hospitals will reduce waiting times. However, Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting is accusing the government of sticking plaster politics.
It seems we've gone from 40 new hospitals to hospitals at home. I think a lot of people will say, well, how will I be able to be treated in my own home if the government's half the number of district nurses who are essential to provide support in the community? I think this is a government that's run out of steam, run out of ideas, and isn't able to deal with the fundamental problems of the NHS, and so they're resorting to sticking plasters.
And finally, members of Britain's Hindu and Indian communities have been protesting at BBC buildings across the country over a documentary on Narendra Modi. Well, people gathered in London, Newcastle and Birmingham in response to the programme, which examines claims over the Indian Prime Minister's role in riots in 2002, in which thousands of Muslims died. The protesters are calling for a boycott of the BBC and for it to be defunded. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Time now for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm your host, Stephen Allen, and joining me on this voyage through Monday's headlines are my fellow comedians Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. And let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages. First of all, we will start with Monday's Daily Mail. Putin's threat to kill Boris. Monday's Telegraph goes with PM sacked Zahawi without a fair hearing. Monday's I, Sunak's allies blame Johnson for Tory sleaze after the PM sacked Zahawi. The Times, Zahawi axed as Sunak gets tough on standards. Monday's Mirror, Tories engulfed by sleaze, rotten to the core. Monday's Express, Boris, Putin told me I could kill you in a minute. And finally, the Daily Star, can't judge a Baywatch pin-up gal by her cover. Pammy, the librarian. And those are your front pages. Try and make some sense of those. Taking us to the front page of the Telegraph. Josh, what have they got?
They got loads of stuff. Good old Telegraph. They got lots of news here. All the news here. Obviously, the big story is Zahawi being sacked. And it's interesting to see how each paper has gone with a slightly different angle. Telegraph are saying that it's unfair. Essentially, it was without a fair hearing. Arguably, it's too late. I mean, this has been going on now for quite some time. And actually, the investigation that Sunak opened into him, they found 7 breaches of the ministerial rules. It was this 4-page report. It's pretty damning. So he had to go. I think what's kind of a little bit scary about what's happened is actually how Zahawi has tried to sort of stop the press from reporting on this in the past. And I think that is the real danger that hasn't been reported, is to how much he was using his money to kind of keep a lid on this for a long time. And this has been ongoing for a while now. Look, and when you look at the money involved here, he paid 4.8 million tax, which he hadn't paid, and 1.1 million as a penalty. We're not just talking about a couple hundred quid, a couple of thousand quid, a couple of 100,000 quid. We're talking about millions of pounds here, and this doesn't happen by accident as such. You know, he has accountants and whatnot.
Yeah, well, I mean, so one of the arguments against this is people saying those angry at it are angry because he's rich, that there's a certain type of Brit that seems to hate people with money. And that ignores the argument that this is to do with, like, why would you take the job, as briefly as you may well have had it, as Chancellor when you know you're about to be fined by HMRC, you're already paid one? There are other questions which actually, so I disagree, it's not about the size of those money. If he owed a couple of grand, then the same problem. If you're suing a journalist to stop them investigating how much you owe, it doesn't matter how much you owe. The problem is suing the journalist.
I guess I'm just talking about scale. Like, I could understand a few £1,000s when we are dealing with millions. if it was a few £1,000s and they got the figures a bit wrong. But this is obviously of such a scale that it doesn't seem like it could have been just an
Sometimes when you're
accident.
working with a calculator and you're drinking coffee and you're on screen, you miss that point, that button, or that zero.
Do you miss 6 zeros though?
You know, if you're shaking a little bit.
All that coffee.
You're lying.
Don't have that much coffee. And that's exactly the kind of person you want as the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Exactly. I mean, I think Arnyak is angry because Rishi's an accountant himself, and he's like, how could you screw up like this? We both know how important numbers are, and now I've got to fire you over this, and it makes me look bad, you know?
That's it.
I think it's been a tough 100 days for Rish. Only 100 days. Yeah. It's been a tough one, hasn't it?
But also, there's a conflict of interest that was obviously, you're the Chancellor, you're in charge of taxes, yet your taxes haven't been paid properly. So there's hypocrisy there, as you're saying. But again, like you say with Rishi Sunak, like his whole thing was he's going to lead the government with integrity, professionalism and accountability. And all we're seeing, he's just getting it at all angles.
After his wife had sort of bent the rules tax-wise already. I mean, these are two people now that have sort of bent the rules in their own favour. And we're just used to the Tories kind of reaching with their big hands and scooping out the cash and putting it in their own pockets and turning to us and saying, we're poor, right? A doctor's going to come to your house. There are no hospitals left. Sorry, there's no bus system left. Sorry, you're trapped. Sorry, you're starving. Oh, and here's bread made out of beans that we give to poor people. You're going to eat that too. That's a story that's coming.
Enough of that. Yeah, more on that later.
It just doesn't look good. You have to wonder, they're spending so much time on this story, but what about Brexit? What about industrial problems? What about strikes, food banks, Tory infighting, the general election coming up? That's around the corner too. I mean, they've got I think there's a lot of reasons for the Tory party maybe to step back and reconfigure.
Do you think they should just like go, you know what, guys, Labour, you just take it.
Well,
we messed up here. We're sorry.
I think after this many years, I think they might. It'd be a relief. A couple of days in the spa, maybe some hydration. Maybe think about what they've done.
Little massage.
Well, when you've had a bad show in Reading, and then you sit in the green room afterwards and you think, I'm a terrible comic. But you see a couple of days to yourself. You call a friend.
This feels like a very specific story.
I'm just saying, you smoke a bit of weed and then suddenly you're the best comic in the world. I think they need a break from themselves. We're our own worst enemies, aren't we? So you step back, right?
Anything else on the front page before we move?
Yes, so there's Labour are going to block the law keeping schools open. So this is obviously, we've got the strikes coming up this week, and the government are trying to introduce a law saying that they can't do it. So Labour are saying, no, we support working people because we've got Labour in our title. And then there's another thing, Sturgeon makes a U-turn on trans prison rules, which we're going to be covering in a sec. And there's also an interesting story here about University, London School of Economics are going to cancel the word Lent as it's too Christian. So because it's like there's a lot of international students, they see that as somewhat exclusive. Okay. If I'd paid all this money to come to the UK or to come to a different culture, I'd want, difference is good. You know what I mean? I'd be like, hey, where's my Lent? Where's my Christmas? That's the pleasure of being in a different culture.
Are they just getting rid of it in terms of the noun?
They're doing it for 40 days.
Yeah. I was going to say, how are meant
to use... That was a Christian joke from a Jew.
How are meant to use the past participle of lend?
Yes.
They're banning that one as well.
Yeah.
Honestly, you can't say anything these days. Is that the line we take on?
That's where we're at.
That's your line.
Yep. So let's move on to the Daily Mail. Scott, what have they got for us on the front page?
Putin's threat to kill Boris. I don't want to hurt you, but I can kill you with a missile. Apparently, Putin threatened to assassinate Boris Johnson in the run-up to the Ukrainian war. It emerged last night. It says the former prime minister said that the Russian leader had bragged it would take only a minute to kill him with a missile, after he warned to stay out of the Ukraine because he was about to strike and he wanted the British to stay out. He's made these threats before, and I mean, KGB, it's probably true. I think he's probably pretty good at killing people, and I think Boris is kind of an easy target. Not going to run very fast. And security in this country is a bit lax. We've seen that in the past. So I don't know. I mean, the thing about Putin is he doesn't really make empty threats, does he? He kind of goes through with what he says he's going to go through.
Well, he didn't. Or he hasn't.
Well,
you think it's coming?
Where Boris
you think it's coming? Well, Boris got away with it. So.
I think what Putin's intention was to invade the Ukraine. He wanted everybody to step back and not get in his way. Because again, we've learned that Putin thought it was going to take about 3 days, especially because he thought Europe would stay out of his way, like they hadn't done in Crimea and in Georgia. He thought no one would do anything, and instead they did. And instead it's taking longer. Every day makes Putin look worse and worse and weaker and weaker and weaker. So of course he's a bully. He's going to threaten all the leaders first. I'm sure Boris isn't the only one he threatened, and I'm sure he only did it because Trump wasn't in office. Because Putin, weirdly, was afraid of Trump and said I would have never done this if he'd been reelected because he would have pushed the button. He had his trembling finger over and I know that he would have gone through on his threat. And now Trump is saying now, with his election campaign being announced, he is saying we're on the verge of a nuclear war. I'm telling you right now, we're on the verge of it. So he's using that threat as well.
So you really think that Trump would have done more than Biden's done in terms of sending equipment and whatnot?
When Trump was shown around the Pentagon famously by the generals when he was being vetted to run, when he and Hillary were the last two, when they're running against each other, Trump famously said, this was reported in the New York Times, when he was shown a country that the U.S. disagreed with, say North Korea, Trump said, can't we just nuke them? And the generals famously said, well, that's not really an alternative, is it, really, for us? So Trump likes the idea of nuking people.
Well, does he like the idea of nuking Russia, which there's arguments there that there's intelligence about connections and whatnot?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I think that Trump makes threats too, but I think with Trump, his threats are very immediate. And he's like a child, you know, he punches at people that are closest to him. And I think that Putin for a long time has had a problem with the EU and like to eliminate some of the leaders, so, you know.
Okay. There's another story here about Esther Rantzen. Bit of a legend.
Yeah.
She's got cancer. It's very sad. 82 years old. And I know she's one of those sort of perennial when someone gets so famous, it's so much part of the fabric of our country. It's sort of, it's strange, isn't it? Like they're not famous anymore. They're in that different league.
She says she's optimistic about her treatment.
Well, I hope so.
I got to interview about 5 years ago, I got to interview her once on a breakfast show, and it was just so cool for no other reason than I remember being a kid watching her on the telly.
Yeah, yeah.
It's Esther Rantzen.
I went on her show.
No way.
When I was about 20, and I said, I'm never getting married, and people who are married are idiots.
Well,
and my best man played that at my wedding.
And now, keeping it light, let's take us through the Financial Times, Josh.
So again, they're covering the story about Zawahi. They've got a picture at the top here. Deaths harden Israel's stance. This is one of the only papers I see who can put this on their front page. But on Holocaust Memorial Day, Shabbat as well, Friday night, a Palestinian terrorist went into a synagogue and murdered 7 civilians, one of them 14 years old, and a newly married couple as well. This is in response, well, not that it makes a difference, but there had been a IDF, Israeli Defense Force, operation within Jenin, which is like a hotbed of extremism, and they had killed 8 terrorists. So there's been this weird thing of equating somehow these 8 terrorists, and there are photos of them with their guns and all happy, and they're members of terrorist organizations, and these innocent civilians who are at prayer on the holiest day, and it's Holocaust Memorial Day. So obviously, and any country who would deal with that would expect to respond, and we'll have to see what it is. Violence begets violence and whatnot, but these are civilians killed, and Israel has a right to defend its borders, and I'm sure they will.
I'm sure we'll see if that continues to be on the front page. As you say, it's only on one.
Yeah, one page. Well, yeah. People don't. They don't mind dead Jews. They don't like them when Jews fight back, and we'll fight back.
I don't like dead Jews.
Well,
it's going to be a heck of a gear change. From that to the Daily Star, Josh.
Bring a room down.
What are they talking about?
Yeah, Pamela Anderson. So she's Jewish. She's Jewish and Israeli, and so she's saying that she's saying, don't judge me by my cover, my beautiful cover.
I wonder what you were going to... The pause after beautiful. I guessed which word you were going to go for, and I was wrong.
And my beautiful red cover, and opening that cover. And she's written a book, which is a bit of a tell-all. It's obvious that she's smart. She's been famously quite smart for a long time. You see her being interviewed and whatnot. And she's saying that before she was going to became like a model and went on telly and an actress and all of this, she wanted to be a librarian. I totally believe it. But she is famously very clever, and she's written the book. I believe she's done it by herself, i.e. without, like, Prince Harry, ghostwriters and whatnot. Yeah. Good for her.
Yeah.
She's had a tough and quite interesting life as well. Sex tapes and, that's traumatising.
Did she have hepatitis C, is that correct?
Yeah.
Well,
but if she probably would have gone down the librarian path, I'm guessing that wouldn't have happened to her. I don't know of many librarians who've had sex tapes leaked, regardless of how many emails they try.
Well, they don't like to speak.
I think you're kind of out of that loop.
All the way through.
Yeah.
Stop! Delightful mental image. Well, that's the front page is sorted. Join us after the break for tired teachers teetering on tantrums. Sturgeon starts making sense. Who'd have thought it? And Donald Trump is back, and this time he's angry. Ooh, crumbs. We'll see you in a minute.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen. Joining me are the two wonderful comedians, Josh J Money Howie and Scott Uncle Shlomo Capurro. Monday's Express will move us on. Josh, when it comes to Scotland's policy on trans prisoners, it's all about penal security.
Hey, oi, oi!
You went there. No, you didn't.
I don't even know what that means.
Ofcom. Sturgeon climb down as Scots Prison Service halts all movement of transgender prisoners. This is, wow, it's not been a good week for Sturgeon, and she has basically, after her sort of all trans women are women, now it's like, oh, not all trans women, the ones who've got willies and are rapists, maybe they're not women.
And face tattoos, maybe.
Yeah, maybe not. So, and the thing is that this is all on in Scotland they put through their self-IDing laws, which then the UK government sort of cabooshed and said, oh, wait a minute, no, we're not going to allow that to happen because it challenges the Equality Act. What's happened then is that after Scotland saying, well, no one would ever misuse these laws and literally days later, here's a double rapist going into a female. And then after that, it turns out there are more sexual aggressive biological men with intact males within the women's prison and being transferred. So it's shine a light on this, and now they've had to go, OK, we're going to stop, we're going to have a look at everything now.
Well, first they did say they won't transfer someone with a history of sexual assault, biological male, into women's prison. And now they're saying, we're going to look at all of it. Because it was like, no, why don't you just look at all of them like they're doing,
Well, they've said that anyone currently, from now, convicted won't be transferred to a female prison.
Yeah.
That's basically just a moratorium until they get their house in order, isn't it? They are reviewing, but until they've reviewed, the rule is that they won't be put...
No new one, but there's...
Had this become a practicality thing? Has this become because male prisons are overwhelmed and women's prisons aren't? Is that why they're doing this?
No, I think they think it's a safeguarding thing where they want this part of this be kind, part of this ingratiate himself into these institutions. And this has been ongoing for years. But there was a horrible article that came out today with this woman, ex-prisoner, talking about what life is like on her block with these two trans women, intact males that she had to live in the shower, talking about how scared she was of being raped constantly. One of them was in there for murder. One of them was in there for domestic violence. She would see them naked, aroused in the showers. These are already neglected, in lots of cases, traumatised women. I know they're in jail, but they're there usually for a reason. And it's amazing that then people are then going to put male intact people, however they identify.
Well, I think some of these, the percentage I saw too is that trans people in prisons are between 14 and 19 times more likely to be raped than someone who isn't trans. So maybe they're trying to get them out of that situation.
Well, then they need to protect them within the male estate, rather than transferring them across to the female estate, where actually there's a higher proportion, there's about 10 to 11% of men, biological men in prison are there for sex crimes. There's a higher proportion of the trans women are there for sex crimes. I think it's about 40% or something. So there's actually more chance.
Maybe a trans prison.
Or something, or just, they need protection, of course they do.
For the trans.
But putting them to women...
What you say about that maybe they should be kept safe, separate for their own safety, is actually what happened with this terrible story, and the one that's been in the news. He actually, the headlines always say he was put in female prison, but actually kept in isolation.
No, he wasn't in isolation, sorry. He was in the segregation unit. That's not isolation.
Oh, yeah?
He was in there with other women.
Which
is before they then go into the actual, get their permanent cell and stuff. So that he was in a space with other women.
And so something needs to be done while decisions are made. Their policy was, do it on a case-by-case basis. Do you disagree with that? Because hopefully the right decisions would be made. I mean, you agree the right decisions are made? She won't be going to a female prison?
Biological males should not be in women's prisons. That should be a thing. Now, as you say, there are cases of women, of trans women who are being abused in male prisons. That's for the male prisons to be sorted out, and how they put in there. To offload them onto women, where it's not that trans people are risk to women, men are the risk to women.
So let's test the blanket rule that you try and put in place. If we think of the most likely to break that rule scenario, someone who's had all the surgery that you could possibly have and is in there for parking fines. Would you still say, because they're cells and you would define them as a biological male, that they should then be in the male prison, whereas Scott says...
They should be safely in the male prison. And by the way, 95% of what we understand as trans women are fully intact males who haven't had any... So you're talking about the 1 or the 1 to 5%. No, but I would say, yes, there is a rule. Biological men should be in male prisons. But like you say, that's that example. But the reality is 95% of trans women are intact males with their penises and who haven't had any surgery.
I suppose I was trying to argue against a blanket rule and more for case by case, because hopefully then you don't get the errors.
Well, that person will have greater strength, biological strength, and also biological men commit sex crimes at the same rate as... So 98% of rapes or whatever, of sexual violence is caused by men, biological men. It doesn't matter if you're trans-identifying or not.
I'm sure we will return to this topic in
the
next 3 minutes. Monday's Guardian, Scott. Will teachers be going on strike? That ballot result is for me, not you.
Oh, right. Teachers are at the end of their tether, as reported in The Guardian. The NEU General Secretary says ahead of Wednesday's strike that teachers are undervalued, underpaid, overworked, and poorly dressed. I've seen the strikes, and they don't look good. They don't look good. They left their house with messy hair. I feel bad for those kids. And on February 1st, there's going to be a big strike. 500,000 workers across the public sector are striking. And Rishi's government continues to face a relentless wave of industrial unrest, and they seem unable to even come forward with any offer whatsoever. They have said, Rishi and his Chancellor Jeremy Hunt have repeatedly insisted that they are not willing to reopen the current year's settlements for public sector workers, claiming that doing so could stoke inflation. But these workers, they want more than the average rate hike of their payment of 5%. They want more than that, because if they were to receive that, then their salaries would continue to go down, and over the next 10 years, their pay would actually decline by £6,600 by giving them anything less than an inflation plus rise, which is what they're asking for. So it's bad. I mean, I think Rishi, it just looks. They were worried about this Zahawi thing, and I think that was terrible for them for the last week. But this has been looking bad for months for them. Terrible press.
Well, all of the industrial action, yeah. I mean, a lot of people argue on this story saying most teachers didn't actively vote to strike, but that's the nature of voting, isn't it? I mean, no one ever then follows it up with, well, most people didn't vote for a Conservative government. It's interesting how they pick and choose.
Well, they have had 34,000 new members join the NEU. But look, the government is in a tricky situation. They are trying to keep inflation down, and the reality is to give all of those pay rises will have an impact on it, and they're trying to play a waiting game where they are hoping, and it is looking increasingly more so, that inflation will come down by the end of the year, in which case they can renegotiate then. Now, that isn't to say that public workers, public service work, like teachers, like nurses, don't deserve more money, because they do. They do hard jobs. But at the same time, as a parent who has been told for years that each day in school counts and to whatever, it feels like suddenly it's a little bit like, well, this day doesn't count towards their eventual development.
But these teachers can't pay their energy bill. They can't feed themselves either. You know, and also, it's like, Zahawi just paid, what, almost $6 million. They could just take some of that.
Yes, we get the Tories to pay their taxes. That might help.
That might help a little bit.
I did hear one point of view on this saying, you know, our teachers claim that they work so hard in the holidays. Why don't they strike on one of those days? It wouldn't affect the kids and would get in all the newspapers. So it's actually...
Well, also, but the good news is that on Wednesday is when Black Panther 2 comes out on Disney. So that's our day sorted.
Some good lessons in there. Monday's Times, Josh, and a politician has accepted fault. It's happened. Make a blue plaque.
It's incredible. Michael Gove, we are to blame on Grenfell. Now, he's presently the Housing Secretary, and he says a faulty and ambiguous government guidance allowed the scandal to happen. So he's been very forthright on this. The tragedy happened very close to where he actually lives, and the impact of it has been huge, not just obviously for the families and the people that died, but what's happened since then, these other buildings that have had this cladding on it, and the bills were being sent to these people who had bought these flats and apartments in good faith and were suddenly being given like these £400,000
residents, it says. In Britain,
so it's been a huge deal. This has been going on for years. So he's basically saying, yes, we messed up, i.e. the government allowed these loopholes there that were then exploited by these companies. What he's doing, and fair play to him, is that he has basically said, if you want to continue in this business of making homes, you have to sign up now and to a pledge that you will sort this out and pay for it. So that he's basically blackmailing those companies that have made millions and millions of pounds and saying, you have to sort it out, because they did a sort of voluntary thing and it didn't work. So none of those companies, I think, did it. Now, he said, you want to stay in this business? This is what you've got to do. And surprise, surprise, I think one of the biggest companies straight away is like, we're going to sign up and this is what's needed. And that is, I think, a very good thing. He's also talking about trying to sort out the leasehold system, which is incredibly backward in this country. You know what? You read this article and you're like, Michael Gove, I never would have considered myself like a fan of his as such, but he just comes across like a very plain-speaking politician, yes, but someone who actually has results.
He thinks Zahawi shouldn't have resigned. He's on the side of Zahawi, so, you know, he comes and he's one step forward, two step back.
Can't help but deflect some blame. But the money won't necessarily solve the problems of people who can't sell a flat, who haven't been able to sell a flat. The point is the mortgages have had to continue to be paid because you can't get a mortgage on a place without the certificate, which means that you can't sell it. And now with interest rates going up, I mean, that's thousands of pounds that people have had to pay for a place that they can't sell, not because of their fault. That money won't fill any of
and that they're afraid to live in, actually, right?
Yeah, in some cases. And then the cost for waking watch and stuff. Yeah, that's side issue there. Let's move on to Monday's Mirror. Scott, and Donald Trump is angry.
He's angrier than ever.
What?
I know.
Angry.
He's really
so angry.
He's gripping his little tiny fists and waving them in the air. It's too early for him to have announced, but he announced his candidacy for president. And so he says, you know, they're afraid of me. My own party won't back me. But that's because no one's announced any candidacy. The Republicans are still scrambling to take over the House and do what they can with that. So he's saying, you know, there's been a lukewarm reception to his announcement. People didn't really care so much. And his own, whatever, that Twitter thing he's doing, that thing...
Truth Social.
Yeah, that. Yeah. It's not getting very many ticks. So people aren't really following him much. I think the party that he kind of reestablished feels like they need to move on from him. I think they think he's toxic. And so they're looking at other people, like the governor of Florida. They think DeSantis really has a chance, Ron. He's only 44, and he's pretty brutal. And he's both mocking and mimicking Trump in his own campaign. So I think that they're looking at him. I think they want a girl, too. Nikki Haley is very fashionable right now. They like her. I think they want someone young and fresh. And I think they think Trump is a bit too stale. And he knows that. And he doesn't want to feel irrelevant, you know.
Josh, I know you're a big Trump fan. What's your take on this?
Well, yeah, I mean, me think he doth protest too much. He's calling it early. yeah, there was a very lukewarm response, not very many supporters turning up in terms of political supporters from the Republican Party. You would have expected, like, if they were fully behind him, he would have had a lot more faces there.
And he's not done very many rallies. He's playing golf in Florida,
and he's and so the numbers aren't. He's saying they will be, and he'll do the big rallies,
bigger and better.
But there are financial issues where he has gone into this so early that now he legally can't use some of the money that he has saved towards it. So I think he wants to keep those costs down as well, because it's probably coming out a bit closer to home.
It also just feels like it gives him something to do. That's why he declared early, because that way we're talking about him. This is exactly not he cares what we talk about. America's talking about.
But a lot of his biggest yellers, like Rudy Giuliani, is up. He's on charges now, and he may lose his own livelihood anyway, because he's broken the law so many times. A lot of those people yelling for him before are now being very quiet, or are not allowed to even go out in public. So,
yeah, fascinating stuff. Well, that's it for this section. But join us in a minute and we'll be discussing plant toxins, but not the fun kind, police neutrality, and how everything in the digital world is basically a Ponzi scheme. We'll see you after the break.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe. Bring it on. Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it.
Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, Monday's Daily Mail. Josh, and surely our Wi-Fi is secure. My password is Bald Men Are Sexy, and no one's ever guessed that.
Oh, so you got that. I've got Bald Men Are Sexy 1.
Oh, well, yours is more secure.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. So, Wi-Fi deal let Beijing see Britain's nuclear secrets. This is a firm part-owned by the Chinese state. It had access to secret information about Britain's nuclear weapons, because basically it was providing Wi-Fi to UK's military headquarters and 45 other defence bases for 3 years. So this was revealed by the Mail on Sunday, and because of that, they're saying that China could have like a comprehensive understanding of these military operations, but also of the people who are part of the military institutions, because obviously it's got their details, and whatever they've done on Wi-Fi could well have gone through to these Chinese companies, which is really a kind of amazing...
It's shockingly stupid, isn't it? It's the kind of headline where anyone can read it and go, oh, that's a bad idea. So how did it get that far? Do you know what, to be really nerdy about it, another thing that Wi-Fi can do, it does error correction because the signal bounces off your walls. So Wi-Fi routers can get a sense of where your walls are. So actually,
it's like sonar sort of thing. Yeah,
they could work out.
It's weird that any of us are still alive when you read a story like this. Like they could have taken us out at any moment they wanted to, any moment.
Yeah. Just take us offline, which might be worse.
There's a weird thing. The owner of this company says Media Force is wholly owned by Wifinity, an independent UK-based company that has no direct or indirect ownership by companies outside. So all of this article is then suddenly put into question, and it doesn't really then explain, well, it is owned partly by the Chinese government and run by them. So it is all a little bit strange. And China has a law which is that Chinese-owned companies have to give over their information to Chinese intelligence. So this ain't good. Basically, if you worked, they've got all your details. Yeah. They've got all of my details anyway, bald one.
Oh, yeah, I've got a Huawei router, I don't care.
Yeah, fine.
At least someone's reading my blog. Let's move on to Monday's Guardian, Scott. Plants being toxic, good. Men being toxic, bad.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, the plant toxin hailed as a new weapon in antibiotic war against bacteria. See, because people use antibiotics too much, we've all been told we're going to become immune to them, that at some point we're going to drop dead from, a flu. So now they've got a new antibiotic called albacidin that comes from a plant-based thing called, I'm going to try this, be patient, Xanthomonas. You're welcome. And it's a bacterial plant, and it produces a thing that just dives in and just kills everything existing in the area. All the bacteria is wiped out. They're thrilled about this. It was developed by British, German, and Polish scientists who, this has all been revealed in a paper in the journal Nature Catalyst. And it's a Norwich research group in this country has helped develop this too. And I think doctors were saying, look, we need something in lieu of. And so they looked around and they found this plant-based antibiotic.
Do you feel good about this?
I feel very good about this because everyone's been sort of scaring us for a long time, saying, oh, we're running out of antibiotics, they're all getting resistant. I think 1.2 million people die in 2019 because they didn't have the necessary resistance or they were given the antibiotics that didn't work. So this is a huge deal, and these pharmaceutical companies haven't really been investing in this because I don't think they make that much money from it. So this is a big deal.
They work too well. If you can invent a drug that someone needs to take on a daily basis, ka-ching. If you 5 days you can't drink and then you're absolutely fine, there's no money in it.
To get a little bit of a bit of a hippie on this was found on this little plant, and how many other plants that have gone extinct which also could have these life-saving implications for humanity are no longer with us.
But then penicillin discovered on an unwashed Petri dish, so why are we doing dishes? We could be saving people's lives by leaving the plates in the sink.
Is that what you tell your wife?
Every night, every night. Monday's Times, people don't take the police seriously, like in the episode of Only Fools and Horses, where Del Boy thinks it's a stripper.
That's your favourite one?
Everyone's favourite one is where he falls through the bar, but that's also a good episode.
Majority believe police don't take crime seriously enough. This was a poll that was basically investigated a bunch of different things, and this has been the reason for this. Basically, we know what's going on in that. People are saying, oh, the police are investigating all these, or doing, I don't want to go into woke culture, doing these ridiculous statements and not actually getting out there and investigating crimes, which is essentially a problem. And also there seems to be a lot more antisocial behaviour going on, and that's down to youth groups being closed, community spaces and whatever, which has been what's basically happened over the last 12 years. I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, through the Tory government, through austerity. Those were literally the first things that were closed down. They said that there would be consequences, and these are the consequences. Antisocial behaviour has massively increased, and the police haven't stepped up to deal with it. So they've got a few interesting things here in this poll. They say most people would like the parents to be held accountable, number one. Also for Saturday tensions to come back at school. I don't know who's going to pay for that. And also schools basically identifying these children a bit earlier. So there are some interesting ideas here. I don't know about Saturday detention. That seems...
It's an awful lot of responsibility, to put on teachers and schools, especially when teachers feel overwhelmed and exhausted. And
work Saturday as well.
Also, I think, I've done a lot of benefits for the police here in Birmingham. And I hang out with the police afterwards because they're fun, they're hilarious. And they all tell me the same thing, which is you'd be terrified if you knew how much trouble our community is in because youths have nothing to do after school. Nothing to do. So when they say they're being radicalized, what they're actually doing is hanging out with people you know, that want to hang out with them and give them something else to do other than, you know, go home and be yelled at by their parents. So like you said, I think they need after-school programs and stuff to keep them involved and interested and intrigued. Otherwise, you know, when you're bored, kids are scary, really scary.
They are, aren't they? Yeah. For some reason, 12-year-olds are terrifying. If you've got to walk past more than 3 of them,
I know. Across the street, they're like 3 nuns, like when they're burst into a ball of flames.
Monday's Guardian, Scott, watch out for online scams because on YouTube this show's described as funny.
Yes, well, people are being pig butchered. Do you know what that means?
No.
I know, me neither. I didn't know about it either. But I'm married. I don't go online looking for people. But there's a lot of lonely men at home with 100,000 pounds in the bank in cryptocurrency. And what happens is some girl named, you know, Tina from wherever gets
I know
online.
Tina.
Yeah, Tina. You've been on Facebook with her. And she says, look, I'm lonely. You got 50 grand? Yeah, sure I do. I got nothing else to do. So he puts cryptocurrency into her bank account because, you know, a friend of hers tried to commit suicide. Anyway, all these stories happen. These guys have nothing else going on. And then before they know it, their accounts are canceled. That meal that was going to be their first date is canceled, you know, and they realize they've lost 110, 120,000 pounds. One guy, one of the stories they talked about in this article, he committed suicide because he realized he'd lost his entire pension in this story. And what it actually means is these companies have fake addresses in the UK. They seem real. If you're online looking at their website, looks great. And whoever is trying to win the hearts of these people says, I'm in love with you. Can you invest a little in this or a little in that? And they do, and then the company suddenly disappears. The address is actually someone's home over a Chinese restaurant in Norwich or something, and before you know it, all the money's gone. Yeah. So it's a real problem, and we've heard about, you know, people, seniors especially, losing money with online, you know, gangsters basically, or being called on the phone and lured into these accounts. And it's just so weird. This week, I've had Lloyd's Bank trying to call me like 5 times saying, you know, you're being ripped off. When I called them today on a Sunday, I didn't know what to do. They're like, that's not us calling you, be careful. And I've never had any dealings with this, but they're getting really active, so be very, very careful.
Absolutely. It's always been there, it's just the internet makes things faster.
Well, more than that, but it's a worldwide problem. Yeah. And what this article is about is how the UK is like a hub for these shell companies because it's so easy in this country to set up a company. You just need 12 quid. And so they're now trying to put through a bill, but of course, with the government, everything gridlocked as it is, to basically say that you have to be further verifications to do it. But at the moment, you literally can just put up 12 quid and you don't need to provide any proof of ID and whatnot.
They found one guy who owned a Chinese restaurant somewhere in the UK saying, I'm really angry about all this because it's screwing my business up. 7 different companies say that this is their address. I've got all these people coming by demanding their money back, and I'm just, you know, I sell Chinese chicken.
There's another sad part of it, which is that a lot of the people who are seemingly, you know, doing these scams are actually themselves essentially slaves who are in these sweatshops in Cambodia who are sort of lured there with false work and then captured there and just told to do what they.
And one woman actually identified this guy online. She said, "Look, please don't. We have a date set. Don't go on the date. Don't give in." He'd already lost 110,000 pounds. Don't give any more money. They're scamming you. I feel terrible about this. I have no options. Just shut down the whole thing, you know. And the problem is that London has forever been a really great economy, has had a very strong economy because of what you could call money laundering that goes through the city, that the laws are so easy here. It's famous for that in this country. So trying to shut this down is, you have to shut down pretty much 50% of cash that flows through.
Well, to Monday's Daily Mail, Josh, and nerds get harassed too.
Indeed. Ex-Google executive sues tech giant for firing him after he rejected female boss's alleged advances. Now, this sounds like the plot of Disclosure. Don't remember that movie with Michael Douglas and Demi Moore? And this basically sounds like that. He's a father of 7, so he's obviously very attractive. Tiffany Miller rubbed his abdominals, told him he had a nice body and that her marriage lacked spice, and that he obviously liked Asian women because his wife was Asian. He then reported that to HR. They didn't do anything and basically said, yeah, we're not going to do anything because you're a bloke. And now he's suing them. But actually it goes deeper than that because he was also told by another boss, he said, obviously there are too many white guys on his management team. And then he had to fire someone, a white guy, from his team to get a woman on his team. And then he and you himself was basically fired in this idea of diversity. So he sort of went along with that. And then, of course, he was the victim of that himself. So now he's suing them, and the reason he was fired was once he turned this woman down, she said she went to HR a few times accusing him of microaggressions, which were accusations that were found wanting, and but they did eventually fire him because they considered him non-exclusive. And this is brilliant because he showed favouritism towards his highest performers. That's what his boss is. That's your job. Like, is to do that. Oh, as opposed to sort of go... And because he said something like, he commented saying about their hustle, and that was seen as being ableist to disabled... I mean, it's
cannot win.
It's mental.
It's not good.
Yeah. So good luck, Google.
He sounds a bit braggy too, saying he's been hit on by a woman in the office. That sounds braggy to begin with.
We've all been there.
Mentioning abdominals is a bit much as well.
These abdominals. Oh my God! People just can't get enough of this stroking.
I'm going to tell you the secret to good abdominals: do a shoulder stand, because upside down, the fat just washes away.
It just sits under your neck.
It looks so much better.
Yeah. Okay, I will do that the next time I go to a restaurant.
We'll see you in 2 for the final section. We've got beans in toast, the new excuse, and AI did my homework, and where to live if you want to live long. We'll see you in just a second.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Monday's Independent, Scott. Top scientists are revolutionising baking, and when you ask them what they do for a living, they can say, I'm in bread.
Right, you're right. A project called Raising the Pulse, which sounds really tedious. It plans to encourage British consumers and food producers to switch to bread that contains broad beans. Apparently, broad beans are healthier than soy. Most bread in the UK, about 90% of bread is white bread, and most of that bread is made with soy flour, which isn't as healthy as broad bean flour, and broad beans can be grown in the UK. Yes. So they're cheaper to produce and they're healthier. So they're going to try this bread out on poor people and students. If they don't drop dead, we'll be eating it soon too. So it's just cheaper bread because the economy's falling apart and we can afford it more. Although the charge is the same as they do for other bread, but it'll be cheaper bread.
Well, I might not understand. I thought we could grow bread over here anyway. It's like a thing, isn't it?
You can't grow bread. You got to get with the
You
flour.
need some soy. Need some soy in that.
Yeah,
what does the soy do in the bread? Is this sourdough? Is this one of those things?
It fills it. No, it's a little bit of flour, and then like when they put talcum powder and Coke, you know about this. We chopped Coke before. They put it in there and then they fill it up and stuff. But soy can be a bit.
Your bread is cut.
Yeah, they cut it.
You make it go further.
And soy comes from Brazil, and it's pricey, right?
So you've got all the travel costs as well.
Yeah.
So this sounds like a really good thing. I don't know how it doesn't talk about how it affects taste or whatever, but this is one of those things like chloride in the water where you can't...
Fluoride.
Chloride. I said chloride. That's because my wife.
Well, that's
is my wife giving me chloride? That would.
Clean you out.
Oh my God, that would explain my stomach ache.
Smell like a swimming pool.
Yeah, that's what it is. Is that what it is? Oh God, it's because I keep on you're
chloride's just salt.
You're really tangential
saw that
right
urination.
Now. It says the team plans to consult and work with members of disadvantaged communities. I can't even say it.
Yeah.
Disadvantaged communities, as well as students from the University of Reading. So they're going to try it out on the scum first, and then see if they can handle it. And then because students will eat in and they get a bit high, they'll right? So they're going to say, look, students ate this, so...
Most students have tried to smoke a banana skin in case the rumour's true. I'll give you that much.
They'll smoke beans.
Monday's Daily Mail, Josh, and artificial intelligence can't be that smart because they failed an exam.
Yes, UNSW, or student fails exam after using OpenAI's ChatGPT to write an essay. Can't even say why. I wish that when they come, this OpenAI place had come up with this ChatGPT,
it's better.
Just a better, short. It's so annoying every time. ChatGPT, whatever. Anyway, Australian university student became the nation's first to fail a writing exam. They was discovered using artificial AI. Essentially, they went, did you use artificial AI? And I went, yeah. And they went, oh, well, we've discovered you. You know, so just deny it, like any normal person would do, but they actually never confess, is what I'm saying. But there has, you know, within educational institutions, there has been this big, like, oh my God, what are we going to do? How are we going to find it? Because as opposed to finding out the people who, like, plagiarized in the past, and they could sort of enter the essay in and see where snippets of it had been previously used, the ChatGPT will just give you a whole new essay. That's what it does. Every time it would give you a different essay. So it's much harder to actually discover it. So one of the things they're talking about to sort this out is to go back to written exams, which I think is a great idea.
But this is an essay. So the idea that you have to handwrite your essays, I mean, just get the ChatGPT to write an essay.
Well, I think the idea is you would go into a room that would have no internet and all be in there.
Read the essay, the ChatGPT.
Oh, I see, learn that. Oh. Then you'd have to have good memory.
There are writers who use it sometimes. I mean, fiction writers, and they say, or they experiment with it a bit. And I heard a story on Radio 4 well, I think on Radio 4 seems long, but anyways, a story about a writer who, she said, you know, the final line of her short story, she did get from something like this, because the final line they came up with was so odd and strange from out of nowhere that kind of made a nice close to the story she'd written. So, I mean, it's not all a bad thing, I think. And students learning to work with this, maybe it inspires them to write a bit differently than they normally would. I mean, maybe it gives them a different take on something they wouldn't come up with on their own. I don't see why it's bad, actually.
Yeah, my next Edinburgh show is going to be entirely written by ChatGPT. Why not? Monday's Daily Mail, Scott, and who wants to carry on forever?
Well, exactly. You know, I mean, if I were, you know, living in Chad, I'd be dead, because apparently the life expectancy of 10 countries in Africa, including Chad, is barely above, not really above 60. So, you know, but the thing is, you know, this was a map that reveals life expectancy around the world. In the UK, it's about 80. In the US, about 77. The highest life expectancy is in countries like Hong Kong, Japan, Australia, Norway. But you know, those after about 65 or 70, you're kind of in pain the whole time. So why continue, really, right? You're on painkillers. You don't even know where you are half the time. And no one's going to... All people want to do instead of have sex with you is take your money online. So really, at that point, put a bullet between your eyes. I mean, it says here, life expectancy growth rates, the difference in countries. It used to be much wider. Like in poor countries, it was about a 44-year difference. Now it's about a 34-year difference. So it's getting better, right, in developing nations. Like the life expectancy is growing. At a time when it was 40 in the 1950s, now it's closer to 60, right? So it's, you know, and their expectations of living longer is increasing as well. Some of these countries that were very poor, apparently in the 1950s, people didn't really want to live past 40, and now they're hoping that they will. They see a future that's inspirational. So things are looking up, maybe.
Gone past 40, it's already a drag. Let's move on to this one, Monday's Express, Josh, and I guess this is what you call a no-entry sign.
Indeed. Texas pensioner forced to erect threatening signs after men mistake her house for a brothel. It's because she's hanging outside in her underwear.
Yeah.
A
red light bulb hanging.
Yeah, yeah.
She wanted attention.
What did she think?
Well,
supposedly someone's been using her address as a broth. Maybe as a revenge. Maybe someone that she's really annoyed, and this is their class. Put her address within some sort of porn. I don't know how people like. I believe I had a friend who came over from America. This is like a thing now that you type some stuff online and you find people that way. It's all like reviewed and. Bit weird. Yeah. Definitely not me.
She might have been a hooker until yesterday too. Who knows?
Well, that's it for tonight's show.
Oh,
Let's
wow.
Another quick look at Monday's front pages. Daily Mail goes with Putin's threat to kill Boris. The Monday's Telegraph, PM sacked Zahawi without a fair hearing. Monday's Eye, Sunak's allies blame Johnson for Tory sleaze after the PM sacked Zahawi. The Times, Zahawi axed as Sunak gets tough on standards. Monday's Mirror, Tories engulfed by sleaze, rotten to the core. And those were your front pages. So that's it for tonight. Thank you very much to my brilliant guests, Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. Headliners is back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Andrew Doyle, Leo Kearse and Nick Dixon. And if you are watching this at the 5 a.m. one after a heavy sesh, then all I can say is enjoy yourself and sit down and enjoy breakfast, which is on the way next. We'll see you next time.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent